All right, Frank, what's the story? I mean, we know they play primarily zone, and we know that he's trying to get money that some people don't think he's worth, and we know that. But what is the real story? First of all, is Josh Norman, did he become a problem that maybe the average fan away from Carolina didn't know in the locker room, et cetera?
Here's the thing with this situation, guys. I think we're always looking to place blame on one side or the other. We've worked and dealt with deals that negotiations that sometimes may not just work for whatever reason. Whether it's a guy kicking and screaming, not liking the deal, but in order to be a successful deal, both sides have to be happy. And obviously Josh Norman wasn't happy, and I think the Panthers came to that same conclusion: is that we're offering him $11 million, $12 million, whatever the number is. He's making $14. We know that we've already gone through this situation with Julius Peppers, and we know that we probably not going to be to that point where we're looking at that and saying that this is going to be productive moving forward. So because of that, I thought it was just for both sides just the easy way to cut ties and move forward. So I don't know if we place blame on Josh. He's probably going to get close to the number that he was looking for in the open market. That's what every player fights for, is to have that. I don't ever look at this franchise tag as a good thing for the players, because it keeps you from getting to that ultimate deal, at the end of your 4 or 5 years that you've been held captive to test the open market. And I felt like Josh saw it the same way.
Do you think there's any chance he comes back if he doesn't get what he wants?
No, I don't think. I don't know if the bridges are burned, but I just don't think that you can come back here, asking for that $11 million, because that's he's given away all his leverage, when it comes to negotiation. So I think that his time's done here. I think he's going to get really with the open market and the need for cornerbacks. Whether we think, or you think, or I think, or anybody thinks that he's a top tier cornerback, top 5 guy. Guys are getting that type of money on the open market when you're one of the best. And he was an all-pro, so he's going to get that type of money. It's just not going to be here with the Panthers.
Now, the obvious question after that is, what do the Panthers do for that position? Because a lot of people say it's not the strength of the defense. It's that front seven, defensive front seven, that's more critical to what they do. So they can just fill in with someone who's maybe not as good but is passable. What do the Panthers do defensively without Josh?
Yeah, I think that's they're going to be the biggest question moving forward, and the timing of everything, and with the draft right around the corner. I think there might be a lot of people that suggest that the Panthers might look for their corner in the top part of this draft. That may be the case, but I really truly believe that Dave Gettleman is going to draft best player available and filter it through and start this machine. And he used the term graduating. Players graduate, and when players graduate, sometimes they have to move on, and so do we. But that means that we have guys behind them in the system that are going to be ready to step up, and we really trust in our philosophy, and that is winning with the front seven. You have a guy in Luke Kuechly, Quan Short, Starlou Tulele, Coney Ely up front, Charles Johnson, who signed a very friendly deal for the Carolina Panthers, getting him for a minimal amount of money when he could have probably got more on the open market. So there's a lot of value with this front seven, and plugging in players in that secondary is something that maybe they feel is not as impactful as what one of those up front guys might bring. So you're not going to need a superstar to play those positions to fill that void. And you might look at maybe in free agency, maybe the kid in Brendan Boykin that they signed, might be able to fill that. But it's going to be a system, and I feel like they think that the front seven is where it starts for the Carolina Panthers.
Now we're talking to Frank Garcia, former Panthers lineman, does radio down in Charlotte, WFNZ, co-host Bustin Loose. What's interesting to me here, Frank? You can usually gauge how somebody received by the responses of their pertaining to sport, their teammates. I mean, and I'm not saying he's as good as Darrell, he's not, or as good as Dion was, he's not, or Darryl Green, he's not. But he is really good. And the fact that you've taken such an integral piece from a team that was, a few yards basically away from a Super Bowl, and none of his fellow Panthers or his ex-teammates seem to be up in arms and vocally questioning this, unless I'm missing it, to me speaks volumes.
Well, yeah, I think that's you're reading something that might be there. There's a reason internally maybe that we don't know about. We're not privy to, behind closed doors that take place. What type of locker room guy he was, and we've seen the situation before with Dave Gettleman, is that he wants guys that are going to be all in, and we can just think back a couple of years to Steve Smith. I've had a couple of good years left. They made the decision to cut ties. They didn't feel like he was all in and buying into the system, but I think Dave Gettleman, Ron Rivera have proven here that there's a hierarchy and no player is going to be, greater than the team. And the hierarchy starts at top and it trickles downhill, and it starts with the general manager, goes to the head coach, and then it goes to the coordinators, and there's a system in place. And that's the way they've seen success, consistent success for the last 3 years, making the playoffs, winning the division, and ultimately getting to the Super Bowl. I mean, when you start looking at, the great organizations, I think you can, apply that to the New England Patriots, to the Green Bay Packers, even though they might have not had the success. You look at the Seattle Seahawks, who've had consistent success. There's a hierarchy in place, and no guy is greater than that team, and that's when there's decisions to cut ties with that player. And, if we look at those things on top of the financial decision that was there with Josh Norman, I think it makes a lot of sense to just say, this isn't going in a positive direction. We wish you nothing but the best. There's no hard feelings. You go do what you need to do. We're going to do what we need to do, and it's just not going to work out here.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, Frank, when you think about it. One last question before we let you go here. You talk about this Josh Norman situation. You bring up the Steve Smith situation. Dave Gettleman is interesting, right? Usually when you talk about a championship caliber team, it's about the quarterback or someone who's doing phenomenal on one side or the other of the ball. But Dave has kind of inserted himself in these discussions. What's the perception of him down there in North Carolina?
Well, when he first got here, it was a New Yorker, a guy that was going to, show everybody that he was in charge. And I think that rubbed some people the wrong way, including some of the team. That's where a guy like Steve Smith probably didn't like, the direction of, the organization and the management, because it was very comfortable here. And, a lot of times players will relate it to a country club atmosphere, in that locker room. And, I don't know if that's necessarily the way to get it done, and that you need to be uncomfortable sometimes in order to get the most out of players. And that's what Dave Gettleman has brought. So the fan base here has absolutely supported him, because when you let a guy like Steve Smith go, I mean, if that goes awry and you don't see success and you don't see your quarterback getting better, and you see this team suffer, then, they're going to be, the witch hunt out there for him, and they're going to, not be real supportive. But that's the exact opposite of what's happened, is that this team has seen success with some of the moves that he's made. In fact, you've gotten some diamonds in the rough with guys like Josh Norman, who they inserted 1 year. You look at a guy like Kirk Coleman, who they get off of the street, and he has a Pro Bowl year. You draft a guy like Trey Turner, and he comes in and has a Pro Bowl year. So the decisions that he's making, it's hard to argue that he's been spot on, and because of that, I think he's got a lot of support. I mean, I think he's to the point right now where he can do no wrong, and even though some people may look at this as a mistake, I think they're going to give him the benefit of the doubt because of his track record that he's developed here over the last 3 years.